It's 6 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to the August board meeting on September 1st, 2022. And as is our normal policy, we'll start with public comment. I would ask that if you have comments, you come to the podium and state your name and the district that you're from.
I always have something to say, sorry.
That's okay.
So, in January.
No, who are you?
I'm Sura Gail Tala. I own several houses and Lake Lemon guest houses and farmland at the lake. I've been there for 38 years. And in January, I turned 70, but you know who else turned 70? The lake. And so this should be a big deal. When I moved here, Riddle Point was bopping. There was a concession stand that was there permanently. There was canoe rentals. There was rowboat rentals. And now it's nice we have the playground, but still is a little bit of a dud. And I meet people all the time. That say, "Oh, Lake Lemon, I've never been there." We can make a lot more money if we make it as a destination. I think that the what's his name that was on the board, Ebelor, kept saying, "Oh, our insurance doesn't cover it." But I think we need to get different insurance and think about renting kayaks and rowboats, not canoes because they tip, but kayaks. And there's a lot of systems you could do that would make it easy. Keep the paddles at the boat. I don't want to get into it. But the other thing is they had outdoor concerts up at the shelter house, and people came by boat, but people also paid to come in. Carrie Newcomer is a very popular folk singer. She rented a house first in Lakeview Hills next to my mother, and then she rented from me for a couple years. So she's familiar with the lake. We should shoot for something like that, getting Carrie Newcomer to a concert, having the food trucks come, renting kayaks, and having more events there, even like a crafts fair.
Well, we are certainly exploring some of those opportunities, and, more to come on that.
Good.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I have a comment. Sometimes when you've exhausted every other alternative to communication, somebody like Adam Casey gets an idea to make a video. And I have to tell you that the video has been incredibly well received and viewed hundreds of times. I would say if you have not watched this video on the dredging project, please go click on the link and watch it on YouTube.
It was good.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you.
It was excellent. And with that, I will ask for an approval of the July 28th, 2022 board meeting minutes. I know there are some typos. Debbie, I know.
I just had a couple, and I can talk to Jessica later, but if you look on that second page, C3, under dredging analysis, presentation, like the second sentence says, "This makes sense because," so it needs to be sense instead of since. Number 7, third sentence says, "Mother Nature's does this naturally." And I just didn't get this discussion toward the end of that page when it said,
Which page are you on, Debbie?
I guess I'm on page 6 of the PDF.
Okay.
It said something like, toward the end after where it says 5 years, we don't think, I think this was, Michael, your comments, but I just didn't know about the sublease. Like, did we kind of explain that? I guess that's self-explanatory.
I think it is.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Motion to approve. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the July 28th meeting minutes. Since Michael Klitzing is on Zoom and can't hear us very well, I'm going to do this like we all are on Zoom. So Malcolm, are you in favor? Say aye.
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 Mike Blackwell is an aye.
Aye.
Les is an aye. I too am an aye.
Aye.
Steve is an aye.
Aye.
Debbie is an aye. Michael?
I'm an I too.
Okay.
So just so you guys
Motion
know,
carried.
if you talk into this, it's carrying him and he can hear you, so you need to be sure to talk into your mic if you've got something to say.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion.
I'm hearing everyone in the microphone, if they're speaking into the microphone very well,
Okay.
which also means that the general public probably is too, if they're watching on TV.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Debbie?
Okay, I'll start out with July financials. This was extremely helpful to have this information at this point in time, especially as we get into the next topic, which is the topic of the budget. But you'll see that we have almost 1.4 million in total checking and savings. Of that, just under 600,000 is all that's left in the construction account. Fixed assets at a cost of about $1 million. As I point out every time, they're not worth $1 million. We have a lot of non-performing assets in there. But overall, total assets on the balance sheet in accordance with these accounting standards are about 2.5 million. Small amount of liabilities, basically on our payroll withholdings. We still owe on our bonds payable, and you'll see in the claims this time we made one payment for $37,000, so we're down to bonds payable of $1,107,750. If you look at the, going to the next page, the profit and loss year-to-date comparison, we were late in receiving our Brown County tax, so we got that this month, and that was the lion's share of the total income of $133,000. In terms of any major expenses, we paid an insurance payment of $11,000. We did water testing for $6,000, and we had the bond repayment of $37,250. And those also are all the major items that you will see in terms of the claims paid when I ask for approval of that. So overall, we had a net income for the month of $36,000, and year to date, we have a deficit of $64,000. If you look at the comparison of July 22 to July 21, some of the things that stand out as, you know, major changes, maybe over $10,000. Or again, we've got that Brown County money coming in of $63,000. We did have marine and club fees coming in of $10,000, which we didn't at this time last year, and we had about twice the amount coming in on watercraft permits. Expenses were pretty much the same, $97,000 this year versus $100,000 last year. Looking at the comparison of where we are compared to budget, which we did quite an analysis on in preparing our 2023 budget, you'll see that on the Community Foundation, we budgeted $40,000 to be granted, if you will, over to us. We are going to be applying for that, and that will come in before the end of the year, so that doesn't concern me at all. The dredging riprap income, we had budgeted $65,000. We did none of that private work, but that's offset by the fact that all those expenses were down as well, so that's not an issue. Looking at the expense side, what we had to budget, the Park Capital Improvement Fund, we're going to have some money left there, we think, to be able to spend on some of the park improvements, because we budgeted $50,000. We've only spent $20,000 thus far. And we've spent quite a bit less on our consulting engineer compared to budget, but you know, we are still using them. I mean, they pretty much go out and measure and do whatever work they do to be sure that that we are okay to make these payments. We have very detailed memos and documentation from them that say this is okay to pay. They've actually performed this amount of work, and you're good to go. And then lastly, our big line item, $67.50 down toward the bottom, sediment mitigation. We budgeted $779. We've paid $277 this far, and we still have $500,000 to pay. And then there are graphs attached. And I'm wondering if anyone has any questions or comments.
When Heartland pays the $30,000 for the lease, what,
Could you speak into your microphone, please?
can you hear me, Michael?
You need to speak directly into it so he can hear well.
Thumbs up.
He can
Did he give me
hear
the
you.
thumbs up? I thought, I mean, I usually, they tell me don't have to speak so loud when I'm in court, so I thought that for sure I was speaking. Can you hear me, Michael? Okay. When we get the $30,000 payment from Heartland, what category will that go in on income?
I'm not sure exactly where we'll put that. We never
Just go
budgeted
into
for
that
it.
Miscellaneous other category, since we didn't have that in the budget initially. So that would, I will put it into line item.
There really isn't a miscellaneous income line item.
Riprap income, I'm just wondering if that, if that's a possibility to move it in there, and that way you don't have such a significant shortage in the 65,000. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah,
Not
I
bad
almost think it ought to be a separate line item, but I get what you're saying, just because
Rental
it's
of
not really
equipment.
for that. We want to,
Okay.
we don't want to think
Yeah.
that we
4150
billed and made
then.
that
All right.
money.
Yeah.
But we'll put it in another, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because
Yeah.
I meant to say, besides that 40, we've got to invoice for the 30 and get that in. So those things will be coming in. We'll have
And that'll be something
70,000
you'll add
more
to
in
the budget,
income.
because if they lease it again next year, okay,
Yeah, we can put a line item in there for that. That's a good idea.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Good question.
Motion to approve financials?
I don't think
don't
we
need
need
a
a
motion
motion,
on
but
the
I do need a motion to approve the
The-
claims
Yeah.
of $88,214.40, and I have already, in my speaking, highlighted about everything. The only other one I had highlighted was Loveland Electric, and that was $1,100, and I think we had some
an
power
electrical
go out.
service put in over at the Upland site on South Shore.
They put a
Drive.
pole in and a transformer.
Yeah, and we got a box put in, so
Okay.
we can run the water pumps and. Steve
Saw that
did
coming
all
down the road this afternoon, so.
And we paid for the park grills and the picnic tables, and that was a little over $8,000. So I think those are the major amounts. So I guess I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the claims.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the report of claims. Michael Klitzing,
Aye.
Debbie,
Aye.
Steve? I too am an aye. Les?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
It's motion carried. Next item is the final discussion of the 2023 proposed budget. Debbie, this is still you.
Okay. This is the last time that we can change it. We had our meeting with DLGF a couple of days ago and had a good meeting with them. And in the budget process, I just want to make kind of a couple high-level comments, some of which I've already made, but for the most part, we've increased a whole lot of the fees. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. To have those participating from the public to be able to help pay their fair share of what it's going to cost the freeholders to continue to take care of this mitigation problem. Most of our expense line items went up at least 8%. Some went up more than that if it was, gas or utilities or something like that. With this inflationary time that we're in, we really looked hard at all that. Adam did a really great job in, once he got the July financials, really projecting where he thought we were going to be at by the end of the year, and I felt really comfortable about that. I think when we looked at the analysis of where we were at, I think we thought we were within $10,000 based upon what we knew was coming in and things of that nature, the $30,000, the $40,000, that kind of thing. The biggest issue, as has been presented before and the board all agreed to, and it was in the minutes, is that honestly, in order to be able to maximize this contract, we have got to assess all the freeholders pretty much double what they're paying now. So for someone that's paying $400, it's just your little part on the Loveland Conservancy special benefits, they may well be paying $800 next year. We'll see, just based upon, how their property increases and things of that nature. So that's the biggest thing, and we're going to have to continue to do special benefits taxes to get ourselves out of this situation for a while until we get fundraising going and some kind of a long-term plan. The thing that was keeping me up at night is the balance that we have in the construction fund and what we have yet to pay. So you will see when we go through this that we've come up with a pretty good solution for that. And we're also taking a hard look at all of our non-performing assets because we want to be fair to all the freeholders, and we need to really look at any money we can grab. And if we can grab money from non-performing assets, we will have them appraised and sell them. So with that, I really want to kind of tag team this with Adam. He's our district manager. Mary Jane and Les were the budget committee. And I asked her to put together a few additional pieces of information just about the dredging and where we're at that I think will kind of give a little bit of, inform you about why we are where we're at, and then we'll go through the budget. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay.
There we go. So the first thing that Debbie asked me to do was look at the construction account breakdown for the money that we had in there and what's left in there. We started off with $988,000. The bond was for the $1.2 million. We bought the articulated off-road truck and ended up with $988,000 in the construction account. The earthwork for the basin from United Earthworks was $432,687. After those payments, remaining balance was $555,000. For Heartland dredging, the payments to date are $121,509, bringing us down to $433,000. And then I actually asked Heartland, since they got a little bit of a late start and it's going a little bit slower, to give us a cost estimate and breakdown for our payments for the rest of the year. So we're estimating for the remainder of the year payments to Heartland dredging in the amount of $394,859. That means we'd end the year with about $39,000 in the construction account. Heartland dredging, I did get the update today that they got their booster pump in the shop, about ready to go. So they should be deploying that next week, and I think the workload that they're getting should be increased by 50% with that booster pump coming in. So that'll be nice. But they are going to be going into the springtime. Again, I talked in the video about how that can help us out in the springtime because we have no mobilization then because they're already on the lake with this current contract. So for the Heartland dredging contract, the original amount was $879,000. In that contract, we made it to where we could go as low as 80,000 yards and keep that same cubic yard price. So we ended up budgeting for 2022 $779,000 because it worked into the budget better, and that was for 100,000 yards removed of sediment. So that's what we had budgeted for this year. The expected 2022 payments for the full year is $516,368. And so we're looking at encumbering probably about $362,000 going into next year. And that's what we did this past year with the earthwork as well. So we can take that funding from this budget and move those expenses to next year.
Which will get us the full amount of the contract.
Yeah, and that brings us up to that full 879,000, so the 120,000 cubic yards. So we already get a bump there in what we can take out. And then we can do a change order on the contract for up to 20%. So that comes out to 175,000. And essentially what that would allow us to do is to increase how much we can get out with this contract while keeping the same rates for sediment removal before we have to bid it out. Because, over time when you bid stuff out, it's just going to go up. So I'd like to maximize what we can on this contract. So the potential change order could be $175,000. At that point, on our current contract for 2023, we'd be looking at appropriating and spending $538,000, and that would bring us the 20% up. We also went out, Ross and I, and looked up.
Backing up right now, when you get to the budget, you'll see we have $650,000 in the budget.
For the sediment removal, correct. So we did go out and do a bathymetric survey on the overflow pond just to get some accurate numbers. The estimates from Shrewsbury were about 80,000 yards. I think that was based on average depth throughout the Delta area. So we went out and it actually came to 158,000 yards that would fit in that. So if we utilize that, it'll literally let us double the project size moving forward before we have to start looking at other disposal sites. So I mean that's a huge deal because we're going from 120,000 yards and then we're adding on another 120,000 plus yards for this project.
So let me interject something that
Could I ask another question that's off topic of money? So what would that enable us to do relative to the dredging zones? If we move forward?
I think, and I was looking at the numbers based on the depths that we have and the Shrewsbury report, because that did use our actual bathymetric data or depth data for those zones 1 through 5. And I think with that, we should be able to get the majority of those zones 1 through 4 done, probably almost clear up to the tip of Point Eidolon in that East Bay, based on what we were looking at. The initial zones that were drawn come way far out to the west in the basin, and some of those zones are actually getting into 5 or 6 feet of water on the western edges. So we won't need to dig those entire zones. We can stick to the areas that are under 5 feet to the maintenance line.
Okay.
So the area that we're dredging narrows as we head north. So looking at it, I think we can get pretty much that whole bay done with this added volume.
Okay.
the comment I was gonna make is when I saw the video and after they did this bathymetric study and we found out that we could fit like close to 160,000 cubic yards, I'm like, why did we spend the money on building that basin for $500,000? And I'll let you answer that because I
Yeah,
think
so
it's a
the-
question some people might ask.
They only let us use the basin because it was in conjunction with the upland site. They wouldn't let us move dirt just in the floodplain, but since we were taking so much out of the floodplain and putting it into the upland site, they let us tack on that overflow pond because we're having a net, decrease in sediment within the flood basin. So that's why they let us, and they said it would not be permitted on its own. So once that lapses, if it were to lapse, and they said it would not be permitted as a standalone item.
So the message is, use it now.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you're saying the overflow pond would not have been approved as a standalone?
As a standalone,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, but they're allowing us to add it to the other one, okay.
For a year.
So on,
Right?
yeah,
How many is a year?
to use the overflow pond, the
Uh-huh.
permitting currently ends in 2023. So on the causeway, there's 158,000 cubic yard capacity. The current permit expires May of 2023. We are eligible to ask for one-time extension for a period of 2 years, which was the initial term of the permit. So we can get a one-time extension for 2 years to allow us to use that pond up until essentially May of 2025. After we're done with dredging work, the area would need to be seeded and to create the wetland, the treatment wetland and water quality enhancement. And that has to be done within 12 months of the completion of the construction. And then we need to go through, we have to monitor for a minimum of 3 years after planting to ensure the successful implementation of the wetland and that it's gonna stay there. So we would contract out the seeding and then the monitoring program to report back to them to make sure everything's established. If it's not established within 3 years, we can monitor for up to 5 years. But, if you're done as early as 3 years and then the plants have taken and everything's growing and stabilized, then you're done there monitoring. And the cost that we got from that from JF Cardno, or Cardno New, they change their name every year. It's one of the biggest wetland consultants in the state, so a real good resource to have. We got this pricing from them for utilizing the seed that's required in our mitigation plan and the monitoring. So that's a pretty big deal if we can double the project and have disposal site for the next 2 years to continue working. It's definitely not an easy choice deciding to use the overflow pond, but having seen those numbers, I think it behoove us to utilize that while we can instead of, just filling our site and then having to look for other sites before we can do any more work.
And you have got a little positive feedback on that, right?
We have, yes. So really, so what I'm looking at and what we've discussed is, in the budget meetings, is that we can do the contract increase of 20% on this current contract. So in order to maximize this project and to continue moving forward, I'd recommend that we increase the contract by the 20%. And then we start utilizing the overflow pond at the beginning of 2023. So we would have 2023, and we could really do that under our current contract, and we would have to bid out the second half of that. We could place approximately half of that pond capacity with the money on this contract. It came out between 75,000 and 80,000 yards, right in that range, which would be under this current contract with that 20% extension. So that would get us half the capacity within our current proposed budget for next year. Then we would have to bid out for 2024 for dredging.
But the
Correct.
biggest issue too is the dewatering of the basin.
Yeah, so during that time, we can keep the upland basin pumped down and allow that sediment to settle in, so we'll be able to fit more capacity there. Or while we're dredging, we can start removing the sediment that is in there. So we'll allow that to settle more and condense and maximize the volume there, or allow us to start clearing out some sediment.
So this is the strategy we used. And before we go through the detailed budget, I guess we'd like to know what the board thinks about that.
Questions on that. So if we bid this out, obviously we'd spend the money we've got and get part of it filled. Now we got to come up with money for the rest of it. So if we bid that out, does Heartland, are they able to say, okay, our cost is this much because we already have the pipe and we already are deployed, while someone else comes in and says it'll cost us, another $75,000 to deploy stuff, right? So,
Yes.
okay, so that would,
It's probably going to win.
that would bias things toward Heartland, just on its own. That's,
They
okay.
said they would like to leave, if we were moving forward with a project and utilize, and they would leave the upland piping from the creek to the disposal basin just in place, because that was a lot of that effort of running that pipe.
Right.
So they would keep that in place, and the remaining floating pipe, they could really just redirect. So it'd be minimum cost on that to the pond.
Okay,
We wouldn't have to have all the redeployment cost.
Correct, yeah, it should reduce that, and we should really essentially have no deployment costs next year, since they'll be here in the springtime.
Right.
And then if we do that 20% increase, then we're getting more on that current contract.
are there any hidden costs we're not considering yet? Like, for instance, we're gonna need a sluice to let the water back out. So we don't only have, as far as I know, only one culvert through the,
There's two culverts through there, and actually this would be a case where the culvert that's above the water would come in very handy, because they can run their piping through there. And then you would have the one outflow culvert, and you would have to put something there, whether it's a weir system or the type of silt fencing
okay,
that
but we don't
use
need to
before.
disturb the road or anything. We don't need to.
Yeah,
bore
correct.
anything.
No, they
Great.
could go through that open pipe, and then they would have to have some type of filtration for the outflow back into the lake.
Boy, that's all great.
And then the other cost would be that planting and maintaining. I'm gonna assume that's $100,000 or low 100,000 and change.
That'll be in the 2024 budget.
20, yeah, at
Right.
least 2024, if not 2025. So we finish construction in 2024, we'd have to plan it within 12 months. That would push us out into 2025.
Okay, and without getting into a discussion of fundraising per se, I'm just curious, if we raised money, does it have to go through the normal budget process now where it can't be used for another year? Or, in other words, if next year we can raise enough money, can we just keep moving?
We can, yeah, so if we were to raise a lot of funds with the community foundations, we can always do an additional appropriation
That's
above
the
what was
beauty of
approved.
The
yeah.
foundations.
Ah, okay.
Because we can take that money when we need it.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can
So
always
if we
add
could
on to
just
the
get
budget.
people to give money there,
Okay.
But make no mistake, I mean, this, I think, what we're trying to propose to the board is this is a bit of a 3-year strategy to use all the available deposit sites that we have and
I see that.
maximize the project. I, for one, think the fundraising is going to be like, coming down the road. We'll see. That'd be a happy thing. But I think that the freeholders are going to have to expect, some kind of like assessments in the next couple of years to try to get this done. So I just want to.
I couldn't
I
agree
want to be
more.
really transparent about that.
Yep.
I couldn't
Having
agree
this
more.
current contract really lasts through the whole next year, like that 80,000 yards. that'll give us a chance to bid that out earlier in the year and have real bid numbers for our budgeting process. Instead of doing an ex post facto and go into the budget saying, all right, here's how much we actually need to complete that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
No, it's all very exciting. It really is.
Well, I would propose to the board to at least come up with a compromise on using the pond. For example, maybe using 80,000 cubic yards at the west end and set up some kind of tributary curtain in there so that, you know, that is contained in there. And then, since, okay, it's permitted, you can do that, you've already used it, it can continue through the life of the project. That way, at least we can see how it's going, rather than pump 160,000 cubic yards in there and, make it nasty, just make it terrible. There's got, there have been board members.
Mike, it's
I'm
certainly.
still talking. Why would you interrupt
I'm
me?
responding to what you just said.
Well, I'm not finished.
Well, proceed then.
Board members have met with the people on the pond and have spoken to them and told them, even the lake managers met with them and said there should be some compromise, and it doesn't appear to be any compromise in the use of the pond.
And
And I actually had one of the residents on the pond stop in the office the other day, and I'm not gonna bring up names, anything in the public meeting, but stop in the office, and then after realizing how much sediment's gonna be coming out and how far we can get, she just stated that her hope, since so many people in so much area is gonna be helped, she'd be willing to go forward essentially with the project, and then just hopes that it turns out to be a nice area with flowers and plants and not a mosquito-ridden swamp, which is not the plan. The plan is to make it a very nice area.
And this isn't the first time a wetland has been created.
But I agree
So-
with the first 80,000 yards. We can definitely start on that west end. And that type of area,
Well, the
will-
west end is our existing basin, right? Or you
or
said
the west end of that overflow pond.
The west end of,
We can start with that first 80,000 away from the homes and stuff, and I think we will probably need to utilize the polymers, which will make that settle out real quick, so it won't spread across that whole pond. Wherever we're pumping at, it'll settle out real quick. Then our discussion in the office the other day too, I think we are required to keep like 30%. We have to have at least 60% vegetative coverage, so there will be close to 30% that'll be kind of open water, reflection pool type areas, not incredibly deep, but, so, I mean, the goal is when people drive by and see it, they're gonna be like, wow, this is a beautiful area and not a swamp, so.
Okay, question then, but you're gonna have to fill it up enough to where it's not water, right? I mean.
6
'cause,
inches below
do you have to put enough sediment in there until it's actually exposed, or how does that work?
No, we'd fill it in the permitting, we fill it to 6 inches below the water level. Since it will be a submersed wetland, there'll be 6 inches of water above the dirt at normal pool. So we'd fill it up to that point.
Okay, and so with the polymers, you just continue to
Yeah,
build on it?
yeah.
They
you
will
can-
have to move the inflow pipe more
Yes.
often than, at the overflow pond, we can just kind of keep it in one spot and let it settle out. Here, we would probably have to work throughout the basin so that it settles in a more even fashion.
Yeah,
Would
okay.
it be more cost or no?
Well, it's in the budget, and so far we haven't had to use any yet this year. We've been really impressed with how quickly it's been settling out. So we still have that full amount of cost that was in that bit of polymers, and that's completely untouched.
So, Mike, let me ask you a question on your comment about the 80 and like keeping it at the west end of the overflow pond or something. So, do you believe that we can and should get to the 160 though, the capacity? Yeah, where you want to like take 1 year at a time.
The numbers and everything are appealing, okay? They are. I don't know what freeholders you're talking to. I
Yeah.
talk to a lot of freeholders too,
Yeah.
that are upset that, they're not gonna be getting dredged out by the Lake Lemon Conservancy District, and what's gonna happen to our non-use assets. And that certainly affects the contribution of those people giving money to the lake, if, you know, so it's a snowball. So, but yeah, I mean, you and Pam met with the owners up there. Adam has met with the owners. I was on a phone call with Adam and Shrewsbury, Charlie or Chuck or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, those were good talks. We made, I thought, some middle ground with those talks. And so I'm just asking that we start slow. And,
But we won't be able to do it
well,
all in
and,
one
and
year
and at
anyway.
least control it.
all in 1 year.
I understand that,
So,
and I didn't know that
If
one of the,
there's no reason we can't start on that west end, then that's what we'll
do.
yeah, now, there's gonna be some people in my district that are gonna worry about insects and mosquitoes and things like that. I'm sure they're here in the audience, and so those things would need to be taken, you know,
Yeah, I don't know if you could treat it or.
Well, when you have properly functioning wetlands, they really take up all the extra nutrients, so you don't have just the stagnant water to breed all the insects and stuff. And
My-
wildlife really does like the wetlands. as
My
far as
sense
flowers.
of all I've heard, lo these many years now, about creating a wetland, it actually makes it better, makes the environment better.
Yes, it's a water
So,
quality enhancement.
but we're not gonna do all of it next year anyway, so we we can start and see what happens.
And at my meeting earlier in the week too, when we were talking about, you know, what areas could be left open as far as having some open water for reflections and that type of stuff, we can definitely be cognizant of, you know, the 30% open water where that's located and not have, you know, homes, vegetation, and then that 30% on the far west end where you can't see. So I think there's definite
and you've
thought
got a
to go there.
contract for buying those tributary curtains. As a matter of fact, I was told that the one that you had coming, that was blocking the sediment on Possum Trot actually worked. It hit and dropped and made a mound there. And we no longer have that there. But, you know, I think that we need to start looking at prevention of the sediment coming into the lake with the actual things that you can use, you know.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
All right.
Are we required then to let vegetation grow in the whole thing? Or are we able to spray a few acres at one end to leave it so it's clear reflecting water?
So after we plant it, it's gonna be put into a essentially wetland reserve. Like, it's gonna have to be, we gotta pass something saying that's gonna be a nature preserve and will stay that way. So part of the maintenance will be making sure that there's, you know, is the open water. Yes, and I'm not positive on how, that would be a little bit more work with the companies that would actually seed it and what type of maintenance plan we have on that, so.
Steve, do you have any comments or questions?
Strategy, absolutely.
Okay. And should we ask Michael Klitzing if he has any comments?
Sure. As far as the approach, it's one that I support. I think it's critical for the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish. With regard to the wetlands, one of the things that I might suggest, we have a number of wetlands that we've created within the parks, within the Carmel Clay Park system. And some of those areas can be absolutely beautiful. And the comment that Adam made as far as if you have a healthy, properly constructed, or ideally in places, an original wetland, they are, you don't have the mosquito problems and the bug problems that a lot of people will think of when you hear the term wetlands, because a lot of people associate wetlands with swamps. But a well-balanced wetland will have the wildlife and vegetation there to basically keep the mosquitoes under control and either eat them or prevent the mosquitoes from being there in the first place. So if constructed right, and like for the Cardinal that Adam's been consulting with, they've constructed most of the wetlands that we have within the park system. There's some other well-qualified vendors too, so we should be able to get some competitive pricing on that as well. But I think it can be an attractive area, different than what it looks today, but certainly attractive. But one of the things I might suggest is, Adam, if you work with, see if Cardinal would give you some examples, or if you can find some good examples of what this space looks like once constructed. I think that would also help dispel maybe some concerns that people have as to what this actually looks like.
Like try to get some renderings.
Well, I was gonna say even, Michael,
Or-
maybe you could give us some pictures of yours.
Past, yeah.
Yeah, I
If
can do that
nothing
as well.
else, but it might be good to have it the September 22nd.
It sticks in my mind that we did that.
Yeah, one of the SPC meetings we brought in pictures of different wetlands and
I thought you had, but it's been a long time,
So
so.
refreshing everybody's memory might be good to put on there, especially with the public hearing on the budget, the 22nd.
That's a good idea.
And I can certainly provide some photos. I'll reach out to you, Adam, to make sure I'm getting the right photos of the right type of wetlands,
thank you.
because there's obviously different types.
Thank you.
Stop
Okay.
sharing this.
So should we go through the budget
Yes.
quickly?
Yes. Yep.
Debbie?
Yes.
Before you go through so you mentioned selling non-use assets?
We're gonna look at that as, we're looking at where can we get resources. It's not in this budget for this year,
Okay, so
but
you're not gonna discuss that in the budget?
it's not in
No.
the 23
It's not in
budget.
the 23 budget.
So,
This will be later discussion.
well, she brought it up, so I
Yeah,
guess I have
sure.
a question. What non-use assets are you looking at
Well, I
disposing?
think maybe I'll let you handle
Like,
that.
definitely the old excavator, the dozer, the other truck. I really do want to get an appraisal.
What other
on
truck? I'm
The
sorry.
old articulated truck.
Oh,
that's
we
sitting
still
there.
have that?
Yeah, yeah. We did have that appraised, and it wasn't very much. Hopefully,
Can you
in
tell me who
conjunction.
appraised it?
It was
Butch
the
Evans?
company. No, it was
Okay, it doesn't
oh
matter.
God, Richardson's, the one out on the corner that restores the equipment and sells it.
Kinzer Pike or,
No, right down from Chitwood.
oh,
The equipment,
CNC?
CNC, yeah, so
Okay.
CNC came out and
Okay.
actually looked at the old truck and the excavator and stuff for that initial appraisal.
so we're
And-
gonna keep the new, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I do want to look at, depending on what we do, and, I mean, nothing's set in stone, if we're gonna rent out or lease the small barge or contract it out, I think we definitely do need to take a look at the new truck as well, too, to see what we're gonna do. I mean, if it's large companies, they have trucks, we'd have to see if we would lease that out and maintain that. We definitely have to have something to move dirt if we're gonna lease the equipment out, so I think that's all kind of up in the air, but at the same time, if, with how high equipment prices are now, if we can get almost what we paid out of the new truck, if we're not gonna be utilizing it, I think that's something that we would have to consider.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at what would that bring us versus having to maybe rent one in the limited amount of time we use it. How much did you say we've used it this year?
Yeah, I mean, really,
Since we bought
this year,
it.
we've only used it for debris, and then with the excavators too, and we do disposal site prep or the cleaning out of it, I mean, that's usually done over a period of 2 or 3 weeks. So for like the excavator, if we sell the old excavator, we could rent a new excavator for, a couple $1,000s for the week or two, clean it out and send it home and not have the maintenance costs on that, so.
If we were to hire McCulloch or Heartland to come in and dredge areas out, wouldn't they need an articulating dump truck?
No, they have all their own equipment.
They-
So in
they
their
would bring
bids,
an articulating
they're
dump
based
truck.
on having,
Okay.
they have articulated trucks. I think McCall uses track trucks and, Heartland has big equipment. So they all have equipment. And when they go to other lakes, they utilize that.
So I know we talked about doing this last year in the budget process, but we're gonna get serious about trying to get that stuff appraised and see where we're at on it and
That makes
have the
good sense.
board make a decision.
So if we did get some favorable appraisals and we decide to sell it, then sell some of this or all of it or whatever, then how does that figure into next year's budget, since you say it's not in
Well,
there?
then we could make additional appropriations to do it. We're not counting on the money. We're not counting on, we're limited as to what the DLGF will approve, for us in a budget based upon cash in hand and what we think our remaining expenditures are. So we can't count on something that's kind of pie in the sky. We would make those adjustments with them
Okay,
later.
so that's why it's not in there.
Right.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
it can be handled next year, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
We're not limited until we ask for whatever it is that they won't allow. That we have never been capped on any of our funding like since we're a special district. Have you met with the rep
Well, right, and the one thing I wanted to point out, and Malcolm, you brought this up in the board meeting, and when we had our meeting, I specifically asked our representative about, I said, so is there any cap on how much cash we can store up and what we can collect, you know? And she said there really is not.
There's not.
And I said, so we can like get $100,000 a year extra and start building it up. And I mean, we prudently would need to have a plan and say, you know, this is why we want to get 100,000 for 5 years or something. I mean, we would need that kind of a plan, but we can continue to do that. But again, you know, I came into this, as you all know, Mike, being, you know, not really wanting to have all the freeholders pay for this, but there's no other way with what we've got going. I know. I fought you on it. But there just really is, I like the strategy. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's the cheapest thing we can do. We can make a huge difference for the lake and all the freeholders. And honestly, you know, it's just such a small part of your overall tax bill. If you pay in Monroe County, you know, 90% of the tax is Monroe County, and there's only a small percent that's really going to Lake Lemon. So we just need to be transparent about that. And I told Adam, I think in the next video, as long as this kind of gets approved, we need to start preparing people, because I don't want someone to be surprised. And this particular freeholder that came in actually asked about that, and Adam got on his computer and, you know, calculated it, you know, for them and said, okay, you pay this now and this is what it would be. So.
And that individual was okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, she realized that it was more, and
All right,
Okay, so
Let's
let's
move
start
forward.
With the cumulative Conservancy Improvement Fund budget, which credit to Mike Blackwell suggested that we tap into this tax, and I guess we do still need to look into whatever else, but I think we better kind of settle it down for a while right now with our freeholders. But anyway, we're thinking we're going to get $50,000 in 2023, and most of that, or all that, will be put into the park capital improvements. And this might be in your report, but, you know, there was a lot of discussion about wanting additional docking space and things like that. So those are things that Ross and Adam have really looked into. So the board will decide and agree on how those things are spent. If you look at the income side, we're budgeting income, are you on that next one? Of $1,163,750. This includes, you know, increases in launch fees, permits, things of that nature. I did get a email that I forwarded to the budget committee from one of my district people, really kind of objecting to this wakeboard fee and not being too happy about that. I mean, it might be one of these things like, how can we enforce it? But I think board members have felt strongly, and you can just look and see the damage that the big waves bring. And so this is what we're going to try to do, institute a fee for that. So that's a new line item. You can see that in the taxes, you've got your regular property taxes, and then we've got the special project assessment. So pretty much doubling the Lake Lemon Conservancy special benefit tax that is part of your overall tax bill.
I do have a question on that. Usually it takes 18 months to get a special project assessment. It has to be proposed between January and April, and then it's takes place the following year. So have you?
They didn't say anything
this is
about
just
that.
the special benefits tax.
It's a
We
special-
broke it out on here just so you could kind of see that.
This is misnamed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a special benefits tax.
yeah, all those line items are the same special benefits tax. We broke it out on here so you could see that some would be going to the project. So it's not like a special assessment for additional tax.
That's not what you're going to send to the DLGF.
Correct, yeah, and they saw, we had the
Right.
meeting with them last week.
Thank
so-
you.
Do
Thank
you think that confuses the issue? Like, I'm the one that pushed for it to be separate because I all of a sudden didn't want it like I
I just want to
wanted.
make sure when you send it to the DLGF that you say it's benefits, it's a special
Okay.
benefit.
Special
So-
benefits.
Yeah, so it's total, when we submitted
Change
the
it.
work, it's the
Yeah,
total amount.
or
No.
you know,
Okay.
you could even call it sedimentation removal, and it, because you can,
Assessment, sedimentation removal assessment or
Correct.
whatever. Okay, we'll change that. That's a good point,
That's a
Mike.
good
Thank
point.
you.
Yeah. It's right there in black and white.
Right now, we're not budgeting money from the community foundation. You know, the stock market's kind of down. I mean, I think that's, again, one of those things that if we come to the end of the year and we decide we need some and we want to apply to the community foundation, because they do have a board on these donor advised funds that has to approve the use of that. But right now, we're not counting on that. Park admission fees, we are budgeting at $72,000. We budgeted $80,000 last year. We feel like if we have good weather this weekend and good Labor Day, that we're going to come pretty close. What do you guys think?
I think we'll be about within 10% of what we budgeted. We budgeted pretty aggressively, and that was based off numbers that we had during COVID when all the pools were shut down and the public beaches were shut down due to algae at Monroe. But I think we'll be within 10% of the projections.
This other line item of $10,000, if you remember, we mentioned it before, it's really going to be for boat storage at Riddle Point at like, what did you say, 250
Yeah, we're looking
each
at-
or
yeah.
something? And you have to already have had your boat winterized and bubble wrapped if that's what you want, but you can bring it there. So my question to you is, what's the first day we can bring them there?
I think we would do
Because
similar
people are pulling
to.
their boats out of the water in like October, November.
Yeah, I think we would do similar to what the fairgrounds does. We'd have like just 1 or 2 drop-off days in late October.
This October?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I'm thinking so that this year too. I mean, that'll be revenue.
So we're going to have a
source.
little extra money this year, maybe.
Yeah, from the.
If you guys all agree with that.
I think
Okay,
it's a great idea. We have the gates there and the property's just open, so.
okay, so let's move to the expenses. That's overall $1,163,750 if none of the board has any questions. As far as the overall salaries, it's our district manager, park ops, Jessica,
Gatehouse.
Gatehouse, and, you know, a little bit of equipment operator we put in there, push boat operator, put a little bit of that in. We may or may not use that, but overall our salaries are $10,000 less than what we had budgeted last year.
And I put that in there because I want to make sure that we do have funds to help with the disposal site prep and clearing.
And
then-
debris removal.
Yeah, debris, yeah, so, you know, if we lease equipment out, if somebody else comes in, we want to make sure that there's a spot for the dirt to go to.
Last year we budgeted, and we go to grand total of supplies, we've got $47,495 budgeted. Last year we had budgeted $73,000. You can kind of look at a significant decrease in operating supplies, going from 21,000 down to 10,500. Diesel, oil, grease, all that down. I mean, these are kind of the result of not doing a dredging operation in-house. Repairs and maintenance supplies going down from 37.5 to 24.1. So overall, pretty substantial decrease, $25,000. Services and charges, and I'm gonna kind of go to the total. Last year we budgeted $244,000. And again, I want to tell you that I had an extra column on my spreadsheet where Adam had and our budget committee did where he thinks we're going to be at to really, you know, take a solid look at this. But overall, we had a 2022 budget of $244,000, and this year we're at $268,000. You know, we ramped up the fireworks a little bit. We still have disposal site preparation in there. We still have our, you know, line item for lakeweed treatment. But for one, this time, last year we didn't budget anything in the cumulative maintenance fund, and we had traditionally budgeted $7,500 a year. So that's in there, and our dam and spillway inspection and repairs costs are in there. So that's a large piece of what's driving up that line item. And utility services, just the way everything's going up, you know, we've had to increase that budget line item quite a bit, and our insurance going up as well. So overall, 244 versus 268. And then you get to our last page, which is basically our capital expenditures, and Adam talked extensively about that $650,000. We know now we're probably gonna have a cushion of about 110,000 in there based upon having to pay off those contracts and get that 20%, you know, so, we'll have a little bit of fluff in there as well.
And that really, when we're looking at the numbers, that allows us to have close to $300,000 still in cash and investments, so we're really not dipping into the reserves. We talked about we never want to go less than half of our potential tax income for the base operating fees.
Keeping the dredger on the lake, right? Is that the goal? Keeping the hydraulic dredger?
I mean, yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the goal, yeah. But,
So that's the overall revenues, 1,163,750, expenses, 1,284,35, looking at a deficit of about $116,000 that we budgeted anyway. And a lot of that is capital, and a lot of that is gonna be coming, or some of it's gonna be coming out of the construction fund. Not a lot of it, only 38,000 left at the end of
yeah,
this
but
year.
with that total project only being like the 530,000 or so, that, we really shouldn't see much of a decrease there.
Did you have any other comments you wanted to make?
I don't think so. We bumped that up just so we have in the budget the potential to spend money and a little bit of leeway instead of having to go back and do the additional appropriation. I don't think we'll touch that 650,000 total, but just
Be
to give us.
careful, Jessica's
give us-
gonna write it in the minutes.
I know. Don't write that down. Scratch it.
I read the minutes and I'm like, oh yeah, we did say that.
But we do think there'll be quite a bit of a buffer in there. That's one thing we just wanted to make sure that we have reserves in case taxes didn't come in until later. We don't ever want to be in an area where we have no money. And we did meet with our Department of Local Government Finance rep last week. I think it was early this week.
It was early this week.
A couple days ago.
Yeah.
So that was good, and they looked over the budget, and they're looking at our cash balances, and we're happy with everything.
And that was without the 40 we've got coming in and the 30 for the rent, you know, so we've got more money that we knew was coming in.
Are we budgeting for wetland remediation for the pond?
No, not
Okay.
currently. That wouldn't be until
And we get all
probably
the sediment out.
late 25.
Okay.
I think 2024 at the earliest, 2025
All right.
most likely. So that gives us time to budget all that out.
So what's the board think?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I've got some suggestions to give to Adam when he gives his report, but I'm good with it.
Okay.
And so I think really, we don't need a resolution or anything since the permitting's there, we've already had our project plan and everything, but I would just like to go ahead and, just for my sake, request a motion that beginning 2023, we'll move to utilizing the overflow pond and to authorize a 20% increase for our current dredging contract.
So moved.
I'd like to amend the motion.
Okay.
To utilize 80% of the pond and then move forward with whatever the second part of that was. Because that's what we suggested. At least you're gonna, I mean, let's start off with 80% of it, knowing that we're probably gonna use the entire pond, but.
80,000 yards.
80,000
50%.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 50%.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
motion to plan
A lot of
to.
numbers being thrown.
I
at us today.
know. So we'll motion to start in 2023 utilizing the pond with our current dredging contract to utilize approximately 50% of the capacity.
Thank you. I'll make that motion, or
Go ahead.
No, I already made the
Okay.
motion.
I'll second.
It's
All right.
been moved and seconded that we proceed with everything that we just said.
Jessica's
to-
got it.
Jessica's already got that written down. So
We got to have
we'll take a roll call. Michael Klitzing, how say you? Aye. Debbie?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
I too am an aye. Les?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Aye.
Malcolm?
Oh, I love
It's
it, unanimous.
motion carried.
The manager's report, I'm actually gonna, that was most of my information. I'll let Ross give a little update. I should have put you on the agenda.
Yeah, so I'll give a little park update. So this weekend will be our final weekend with the park being open for the 2022 season. I have been at the park every single weekend since Memorial Day this summer, and it's been,
And you're still smiling.
yeah, it's been fairly smooth. I mean, we've had some unruly people here and there. I think all in all, though, people have enjoyed their time at the park, and it's been a success.
I do want to ask a question about that, because I was kind of surprised Adam and I talked about that, and he's like, well, this is the last weekend that we're really formally open. Well, it's really nice weather in Indiana for a lot longer, you know, like, has there ever been any thought
And we
about
can
staying
look- so
open
it
longer on the
gets to the point
weekends?
where we lose money having it open
See?
throughout the week, so have nobody coming in. But if it's gonna be like 80 and sunny for a weekend, and we can find staff, then we can always
I
open it up.
I've thought
for-
that
I
same thing
think we
myself.
should. I think it's a missed opportunity,
And I think
really.
early May we should look at too, because like this week or this year, the week before, and even the 2 weeks before Memorial Day, people, I think even more so in the spring, are itching to get out. Where in the fall they're like, we've been to the beach.
May 1, October 1 is kind of a good time frame.
Yeah, but we'll have to look really at, maybe it's a weekend thing as far as the staff, and then if we can get, the biggest issue is if we have staff that are local to the area in the summer, but then go to college, and then we're not having them. But yeah,
But there's so many college students coming back.
we have thought about that, and I think it could be something that we look into.
Thank you.
Yes.
Question, then, I've always been kind of bothered, though, when you say the park is closed, because I kind of see the park as everything behind the gatehouse, you know?
Yes.
But it's not all closed. You can still use the boat ramp.
The boat ramps are open, and we still let people like walk and exercise. We just
Well,
shut down
yeah,
the
and that too,
restrooms,
you know,
yeah.
and that's kind of always bothered me as well, that we let people know, because, you know, closed is closed, like, am I gonna be arrested if I go in, you know? So I don't know if we could change the terminology or something,
If
or
you
say
got
the.
30 others with you and a big cooler, you may be.
So, I mean, I think the idea of exploring weekends before Memorial Day and some weekends right after Labor Day would help that tremendously, but I don't disagree that that when you say the park's closed, then people are like,
Yeah.
can't I launch a boat? You know, so we may want to think about that.
Yeah, just like, well, beach and
The
picnic
beach,
area.
maybe
It'll
closed.
be, it'll be like, it's free. We don't have to pay.
Yeah. The bathrooms are
Do we
closed.
have any
Do you have-
cameras
Yeah, see-
out there at all?
Campers?
Cameras?
We don't
Oh,
discuss security in
cameras.
public meetings.
I mean,
What'd you have to say, Michael?
Yeah, I would agree with the commentary about like beach and public restrooms are closed. That way it's a little bit more clarifying and doesn't provide confusion that, yeah, you can still use other components of the park.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked about the,
and there's still, excuse me, there's still a porta potty, right?
By the
Yeah,
boat
at the
ramp.
boat By the
boat
Year
ramp.
round. And I do like that, the beach and public restrooms, that way people know.
yeah,
I think that does a pretty good job of clarifying all
yeah.
Debbie, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, from a liability standpoint, do we have any cameras out there so that we know, like, if, like you said, someone brings a bunch of coolers and hey, they're closed, we're gonna have a big party, you know, it's big.
We can put a map up of all our camera spots. No. we do, we're pretty strict and we're out there a lot. Thankfully, me and
Okay.
Ross live so close that
Okay,
one of my favorite
Also have some
pastimes is-
freeholders that are nearby that when there's
True.
issues, I typically hear about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
all right, so Michael's our security.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ross,
Continue.
continue.
Yeah, so it's been a good year overall. We added the grills, we did some changes to the shelter house. We've seen pretty good feedback with just the shelter house rental increase this year. So I think people have appreciated some updates to the shelter house. There's new picnic tables in there finally, and that looks really nice. The shelter house really in general looks pretty nice right now. And I think, you know, we did budget quite a bit for park entrance fees this year, and we are going to be quite close to that. And I think, you know, this is my first year, but I do think that having more people the past 2 years have less options that came to us, I think we have seen some retention of folks who came to Lake Lemon for the first time and now enjoy it and are coming back and choosing us potentially over just purely by the numbers of people we're getting. It seems like that must be the case. So that's very, you know, positive feedback, I think, from folks coming. I think this year was a big learning year for me. I had been to Lake Lemon before, but I had never been to Riddle Point Park. So for me, just kind of understanding when it's used the most, how it's used, where our, we need to improve on our maintenance of things. I think next year having likely all new gatehouse staff that I can train, under my leadership, and then knowing how it's going to actually operate, having more experience should be a little bit more positive next year. So I do look forward to that.
Good.
Excuse me, with that, have we addressed the people coming into the park that are freeholders and whether or not they have to pay to come in the park?
I
No.
mean, we have not officially
No,
addressed
but
that
we
at
will.
all. Yeah, I think that's something that, the board needs to make a decision on
Yeah.
how they feel about
We'll
that.
put it on a future agenda and talk about it.
On an action items list?
Yeah.
Where are we with that?
Like, as it currently states, I mean, you pay to enter the park by land, $70.
So, I mean, part of it is that it does take staff, people are picking up trash, they're doing all this kind of stuff, so it's kind of a tough thing,
Yeah.
but we'll have to look at it
We'll
down
have
the
to look at
road.
it. But thanks.
If you
thanks.
come by
Yeah,
boat,
one if
it's
by
free, but
land,
if you
0 if
ride-
by boat.
So where,
Walk in, you can park down the road and walk in.
From North Shore, that'd be quite a walk.
we talked about docks. Are we,
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
have begun that discussion with, contractors, I guess, suppliers. And so we haven't gotten any hard quotes on that, but throughout this fall, we are going to. And so we will know next year. And I think, with our budget for capital improvements, we should be able to, get a dock that would hold a number of boats, for the price that we could afford. So I'm cautiously optimistic that there will be a dock before too long.
where you and I talked?
We'll
By
have
the
that feedback.
well, so it'll be in the closest to the beach that we can get at a grade that will meet ADA specifications. How about that?
So we can see our boat from the shelter house. I want to be able to see my boat from the shelter house.
Well, one thing about it
Okay.
is that,
Let's,
well, let's let him get going on that.
Let's
But
let
I think
him
one big thing
continue.
is, and when it was brought up the last, it's like, okay, there's 500 and some freeholders, how many boats can we get?
well, but they're not all going to come at once.
No, and there's probably gonna have to be restrictions, because you come stick your boat there and you stay all day long, and, that prevents other people, because we're probably not gonna have that many, but it's a
Well,
whole
I
nother
think
discussion.
my guess is the majority of people that come over there come to use the bathroom and maybe to spend a little bit of time on the beach with the grandkids or something.
Right.
And then they get back on their boats and go on.
So we're looking at doing like a 6-boat docking
Yeah.
system and then keeping that mooring area.
Yeah, that
open
mooring
as
area
well.
would still be there. So really,
10 maybe.
yeah,
That's good. That's good.
yeah. I mean, we're not gonna have, the marina style of a, 400 feet of dock space out there. That would just be completely.
Ross, continue.
Um,
I'm sorry we keep interrupting.
No, that's fine. And then, this winter, we're still looking at things, throughout the winter to improve at the park. But yeah, that's pretty much my spiel.
And kind of along a general update, we finally do have we have all the subleases, every single person that's supposed to pay subleases, all the property owners, thanks to Jessica, in the database. So now we can finalize the mapping, because now we know who and where everybody is.
And then we can go back.
So,
Bases.
exactly,
Sub-
so
sublease.
we had our mapping before, everything GPSed, well, a good portion that we had, but we didn't know what we didn't know, so now we can compare the list of, what it is, and then get that, so. we're
That's great.
making, great progress on that. Vegetation control, I did the second treatment last week for the Lotus. That should be the last treatment for the year. If there are any small spots that pop up, let me know, but generally as the water starts to cool down, that vegetation will die back. So usually the second Lotus spray is the last spray that we have. And then the sediment management project, as of the end of July, what month is it? End of July, they're at about 25,000 cubic yards. So they're moving along. They're bringing the booster pump in to increase that. Their slow start and a little bit lower return rate on work did help us out for next year with the budgeting process, though, to cut out all those mobilization fees.
So this booster pump is new, I mean,
They
they
put
didn't
it, they
start
put
out
it
with
in
it.
line. It's a giant pump. I think it's the same type of pump that they have on the barge. And currently, they said they've never had issues with the barge, but there's such an elevation rise going up to that they're at a level where if they increase the pressure anymore, the
They'll
joints
blow
on
the-
the pipe start breaking apart. So the booster pump will go in line to alleviate some of that pressure, and it seems like it's going to be a pretty big pump. I think they got to bring in like a crane and stuff to set it.
What's their expectation of how that will boost?
They're hoping for a 50% production increase.
Okay, that's great.
That's all within our contract.
Yeah, that's all.
Because they charged us per cubic yard.
Correct, yeah. So they're bringing that in to kind of speed up their time.
So 50% increase, so if we're getting 20%, or as Malcolm elated to 23%, we're probably gonna be looking at 46% or 50%.
I think the way it would work would be the percent of material would be the same, so it'll still be at 25%, but we'd have 150% of the volume coming through, if that makes sense.
Of liquid and.
Correct, yeah, correct, yeah.
All right.
So all good news there. They've been great to work with. So we're moving along and going good.
So with, I'm sorry, can I ask a
No, yeah,
question?
go ahead.
I believe we're gonna have two companies that would be willing to rent equipment from the LLCD, the small barge and probably the small excavator, and possibly the marina and another contractor. Would you be open to meeting with the people at the marina, myself, and Roth Contracting?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just kind of put our heads together what we think that the rental cost would be for
Yeah,
that
it'd
equipment.
be good to have a couple board members. So you have to probably 3 board members meet that. I
Okay.
think this fall and winter time would be the
I'd be happy
optimal time.
to be one of the board members
Yeah,
to
that'd be
do
great.
that. And
We can discuss that and try to get the details of what we charge and kind of.
bring that back to the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
All right.
that makes sense.
All right,
I think
thank
that's
you.
a good idea. And I think that
Debbie,
is an optimal situation.
I would draft you to be part of that discussion if possible. If not, I'm happy to do it as well.
And I like that a lot because it keeps the equipment on the lake. It keeps it local. We could hire them for debris and stuff.
There's no mobilization.
No, I think it's a very good idea.
Okay.
That's all I got.
I was gonna ask you about, are we gonna lower the lake at all this year?
I don't want to this year because we have like. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that and we have like all the mapping and stuff, and I'd hate to have too much movement from exposure to rain and stuff when we're trying to keep this as accurate as possible.
And last year it lasted for what, a week?
We couldn't get over 2 feet last year.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless.
And again, I hope, at what point do you think we're gonna be getting stumps out of the east end and everything? I mean, we are gonna get those out, right?
Yeah, they're coming out as they.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been moving debris as we get to it.
Okay.
So there's already a lot of stuff going. Go ahead, Michael.
I would be remiss, I have received requests from several of my freeholders that would like to see the lake lowered, not significantly, but enough that they can work on their walls. But, so I said that I would share that request with the with the board, so.
Thank you.
What's the down?
End of your report,
Yes.
what's the downside?
Of drawing on the lake, the biggest thing is when you expose all the sediment in that bay where it's so shallow. I mean, you draw down a foot, you expose 100 acres of sediment right there, and then when all that rain hits it, it just sloughs it in and moves it in. So doing it every handful of years for work is one thing, but right now, why we're dredging in there, and for our mapping, it'd be nice not to have.
Well, in your next update, would you be sure to kind of say why we're not doing it then?
Yeah, and I think we've
I
had
thi- I
discussion
think that's
before about
wise.
trying to do it every
Yeah, we have.
so many years
we
for
have. We
maintenance.
came up
of-
with a policy.
I enjoyed your video. I would ask that you indicate what the plan is going forward.
Well, and it will be in large part of the discussion we
Right,
just
and
had.
that, so that, but that, no, it was a nice job, very well put together. But then, as you said, we really, this is the plan for now. And then what we just discussed today is what our,
It's a nice 3-year plan,
Okay.
and I think we
Right.
have to be transparent and.
Yes.
Yeah,
folks
we'll
need
send
to
that motion
know.
out, and the next one I'll talk about all this, essentially the next 3 years.
Very
so.
good.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
We have to go through the process. You
Oh,
know
my
that. So, our next meeting will be Thursday, September 22nd, here at the CBU at 6 PM. This will be the board meeting and the public hearing on the 2023 budget. With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make such a motion. So, aye.
No. Motion?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, and I don't need to do a roll call, say aye.
Yeah.
Aye. Have a great Labor Day weekend.